to my channel Learn to Code with Sagar. In this video we are going to look how we can create custom hooks. But before that, why we need custom hook? React comes with several built-in hooks like use state, use effect, use context. Sometimes you will wish that there was a hook for your some more specific purpose. For example, to fetch data, to keep track of whether user is online or not, or to connect to chat room. You might not find these hooks in your React, but you can create your own hooks for your application need. And by using that, we can reuse the logic with custom hooks. Okay, so let's start by creating one count application where we will have one increment button and decrement button, and on clicking of that we can change the count, and after that we will look how we can convert that logic into the custom hook. So here I am creating one div and I will show here count value. Okay, I will call it count1. Let's create one state for it with initial value 1 and take that in a count1, and method is set count1. Okay, and I am using this count1 at this place. Okay, so here you will see our count1 is showing. Now create two methods on increment 1, which will set or increase the count1 value by 1, and one more method on decrement 1. Let's call this same method. Here we will decrement by 1 and add two buttons here, one for increment, one for decrement, and on clicking increment I will call on increment 1, and on clicking decrement I will call on decrement 1. Okay, so let's check. I'm incrementing it, so it is increment by 1, and on decrement it is decrementing by 1. So suppose I want one more count which will do same functionality. So how I can do is I can just copy this, or I will rather create count2 set count2, and here use state, and I will initialize here with 1. Okay, and I can copy this and just make this 1 2 2. Okay, so let's make here 1, this count also 2. So we have the state value, its function to update that, and two more increment and decrement buttons. Let's copy this and make this count2 and on increment 2 on decrement 2. Let's see. Okay, so we can individually increment the count2, also we can decrement the or increment the count1 also. So everything is fine, but why I need, so whenever I need to like add one more count, I will need increment and decrement button also. So with the same logic, how we can make this a custom hook? Let's create one more file. We will call use count.tsx. Remember one thing, to create custom hook we need to use prefix use. Okay, so use count, and I am exporting this one, export default use count. As I said, remember we need to start with use. What we need is initial value which will be a number. Okay, so let's look what we need here. We have on increment and on decrement functions. Okay, so what I can do is I can create a state here which will hold the count value. Okay, and I will need two more functions. Let's create that. Const count set count, and here use state, and use state will have initial value, and I will here create on increment. Okay, set count with count plus 1, and one more method, that is on decrement. Okay, and I will decrement it by 1. So now we need to uh, return these things, count, increment, and these two functions. So how we can do? We can either return in an array or in an object, both. So I am returning here in array. First will be count, second parameter will be on increment, button click and on, and third will be on decrement. Okay, so we need to mention here the type also. First is a number. Okay, count is a number, on increment is a function. So we can write here, because we are not taking any parameter and we are returning void. And third is the also same. Okay, void. Let's save it, and now we can directly use this use count in our application. So how we can do? We can use count hook. Let's import this by control dot, and I can pass here initial value 1, and I can take this in a count. First we are getting count, second we are getting on increment, and third we are getting on decrement function. Okay, we can have any name, alternate name. It's not mandatory to use count or on increment, on decrement. So better I will make this I will comment this out, and I can make this count 1, on increment 1, and here on decrement 1. Let's check whether this is working or not. Okay, so here we can see our count 1 is working with the custom hook. Now do the same thing with count 2. Let's comment this out, and here I am making it count 2, on decrement 2, on increment 2, and on decrement 2. Okay, so you can check all this logic is now in our custom hook. Let's see what we are doing here. We have created one state which hold the initial value, and we create two functions which are updating that state by calling its method, and we are returning all these things. Okay, so whenever we call the on increment function, it is updating the count, and we will get the new count. Okay, so this is how it is working. So we no need of this code now, and you can check. We can have both the working. So suppose I make here 10 or 100 and refresh this one. Okay. So the count 2 will be 100, and count 1 will start with the 1. That's okay. Now let's look if I wanted to track its previous value. How I can do is I can create one or one variable that we can call previous count 1. Okay, previous count 1, and as we know we can use effect to make or to execute the code once the rendering happens. Okay, so what I can do here is I can update this previous count with the count. Okay, so here I have write some wrong code, we will correct that one. Before that, let's write here one tag which will show previous count, and here I will have previous count 1. So it is showing the same count. Now let's look how we can create the we can maintain the previous count. So to do so, we need to use the use ref. So you by use ref, the value is persisted even on each render, and we need to use like dot current, previous count dot current, and its value. Okay. Okay, so let's pass the initial value to use ref, and whenever the count 1 is updated, okay, so whenever count 1 is updated, we will call this hook and update the latest value in the previous count. And while using also, we need to write previous count 1 dot current. So how it will work, let's check. You can see previous count is 5, next count is 6. On decrement, the previous count is 6, current count is 1. So what's happening here, once I update the count 1, use effect is getting called and it is updating the new value. But as we know, use effect execute after re-render, after the this rendering happen. So that's why the previous value is shown here, and after that the new value is getting updated to the previous count. And I need to create previous count for count 2 as well. So I will just copy this, paste it here. Let's create one more variable, previous count 2, use ref, initial value will be count 2, count 2. Here also we need to use effect. Okay, and we need to provide dependency, that is count 2, and inside use effect we can set previous count 2 value with latest count 2. Okay, now here I need to use previous count 2. Okay, so let's check, increment it, so we can see the previous count, decrement it, we can see the previous count. I hope you understand why I write this. Let me repeat. So every time whenever we change the count, it is set in the previous count, then that is shown on the UI, and once the rendering happens on the UI, use effect is getting called. Okay, and the new value is getting updated in the previous count, and when we again increment the count, its value is shown, and after that it is getting updated. So first it is shown on the UI, then it is getting updated. That's how we are maintaining the previous count. But again here we are writing the repeated code. Okay, how we can implement the use previous custom hook. So let's create use previous dot tsx. Okay, I will create here use previous and export that, export default use previous. Okay, here we will need the initial value, that is number, and I will return the or let's create a variable, that is previous count, and we need to like use ref whose initial and need to provide the initial value. Okay, here count, and whenever the initial value is changed, So in use effect we have two things, two parameters. Second one is a dependency. So I am passing here dependency as whenever the initial value change, then execute this function. Okay, and here I will update its previous count's current value as initial value and return the initial value. So same code I have written. So same code I have written in the use previous hook. Okay, so let's use that. So I will remove this, and instead of use rep I will use previous, and it is imported automatically. So whenever the count 1 value is changed, the use previous custom hook will notify that initial value changed, so it will return the its existing value, and after that use effect will execute and it will update its value with new initial value. Okay, so here in this hook we can directly return this previous count dot current. So in our app we don't need to write dot current. Same for use previous, no need of this, we just need use previous, and we can remove this dot current. Now check it's working, and let's check for it, it is also working. But if you observe here, the previous count is 106 and latest count is 107. If I click on this button, the here previous count is and the count value both are same. Why? Now we need to dig down into hooks. So on every render, like I update the state, so on once we update the state, re-rendering happens and custom hooks get executed every time. So that's why here it is not getting executed when I change the like another count. So but it is returning its latest value. That is why other previous count is getting updated. So let's check how we can solve this. Let me add the console.log use previous. Okay, and here I am printing the initial value. Okay, and open the dev tool. Let's check in detail. Okay, fine. Now I am updating this one. You can see use previous is also working for this one, the second count. Okay, now let's click for count 2. It is calling for this as well. So we have use memo hook. Okay, if you don't know about use a memo hook, you can watch my video. I will link that in a comment. And is in use memo, I can provide here dependency. So unless and until the initial value change, don't execute this function. Okay, so from this function I can just return that previous count dot current. Now let's check this. Okay, so previous count is 5, next count is 6. Now increment this, previous count is 106, but you can observe that now it is not getting changed. Why? Because for this count the initial value is not changed. That's why the latest value is not returned, the existing value or its previous value is returned. Okay, now move on the next part. So suppose I want to increment the count with specific value. I don't want to increment by 1, but I want to increment by the 10. So from the custom, with the custom value, I can create here input with number, and I can take the number from user, and whatever the number user will provide, the increment and decrement happen with that number. Okay, so how we can do that? Let's create one more state for this. On the top I can create const here use state, sorry, use state, initial value is 1, and take that count 1 input, and here set count 1 input. Okay, and here I can pass this value here, and on change I will call on input 1 change. Okay, so let's create that. On input 1 change I will have here e, so is react dot change event, and which event is happen, html input element. Okay, so whatever the value user input here, we can get at this place. So we can set this set counter 1 input here, e dot target dot value. So we can make this string. Now okay, we can type in the input box. What I need to do, I need to pass this count to use count. So whenever user press on the increment, the count will increment by this number. So let's go inside the use count custom hook. I will take here change count by, which will be number, and instead of 1 I will use this variable, and if no one passed the number, I can set it by 1, a default value. Now let's check in add.tsx. We can now pass the count 1 input. Let's first convert that in a int. Okay, and check this. Let's make it 200. So current count should be to 201. Okay, it's working, and if I decrement it, it will also decrement by 200. So I can do same thing for the second count as well. So what I need to add the input box. Okay, so instead of count 1 I will use count 2, and instead of this method I will use on input to change. Let's do that. Okay, so count 2 input, here set count 2 input, and at this place count 2, and here also count 2. Let's copy this one and change 1 to 2, and here 1 to 2. Okay, and we need to pass count to input to this count. Okay, so pass int, pass this count here. Now let's check for this as well. So I can do by increment by 10. Let's check. Yeah, so it is incrementing by 10. So what code we are repeating here is input, this one, on input change, these methods, and we are creating one more state. So we can make this reusable code with custom hook. So let's create one more hook, name it use input dot tsx. Okay, let's create it, use input, and export that one, export default use input. So what things we have to do here is we need one state and one on change event. Okay, so here also we can take the initial value which can be a string, because in a text box we only get strings. And here we can create value, set value, and we can initialize use state with initial value. One more function on change. Here we are going to get the event which is of type react dot change event, as it is specifically for HTML input element. So I will mention it here, and I will call set value, and here I will set it by e dot target dot value. Okay, and what I need to return is I need to return value and on change event. Okay, so how I did is I moved this in our hook, also this method in our hook. Now instead of this I will use input, and instead of this I can take all its return in input 1. So input 1 have value and on change. So we can pass count1 input as input dot value. Okay, so we don't need this function now. Okay, on input 1 change we can remove this, and we can pass input 1 here on change, and value input dot value. Okay, again we can minimize it, as input 1 is returning value and on change. So we can remove this thing, and we can simply write like object destructure way. Okay, so it's simple. We have moved our code inside hook. Also just remove the second count. So let's make is use input, take this in input 2, and at this place input 2 dot value. Okay, remove this now, we don't need, because custom hook, this method is working for us now. Here at this place we don't need to write like this, we can directly write input 2. So see how we can reuse the code by custom hook. Okay, let's check whether it's working or not. Let increase by 15. Okay, it is working, and let's increment count 2 by 20. Okay, and decrement it. Okay, that's good. So as of now we have created 3 hooks. One is use input, use count, and third one is use previous. But here one thing is happening, like as I told you, once we update any state, all the hooks will re-render. Okay, so let's add log in each hook. Okay, use input, and here initial value. Okay, then in use previous I already have, and in use count, okay, here we need to use log use count initial value. And let's check how we can minimize it. Okay, so even on clicking of this, the hooks for count2 is also working, rendering. So yeah, anyhow it will call, but we can like use the performance related hooks like callback, use memo. So whenever we are using the callback functions like on increment, on decrement, we can wrap that inside the use callback. Okay, so here in use callback, first parameter is the function which are going to execute, and in second we need to provide the dependency. So here the dependency is on change count by, also on yeah, let's format it. Okay, let's add the count also, and here also we need to wrap inside use callback. If you don't know what is use callback, I have created a video on that. Have a look on that part. Okay, so inside use callback I need to provide dependency, the same dependency like this. Okay, so even the use count hook will execute, but it will not execute these functions, or it will not uh, recreate it. It will just return whatever it has. Okay, so here I already have use effect and use dependency, and we have use memo, and for use input there is no such thing. So yeah, anyhow every hook will get called, but we need to check no function or no extra functionality should get executed. Let's jump to the fourth hook. So I will create one more component here, just name it search text.tsx. This is like a search text box like we have in a table. So search text box I can say, and export this one, export default search text box, and inside that return a input, or just wrap this inside a div and write here input type as text, and I will here use placeholder search. Okay, now go to the, now we don't need this app, we are done with these three hooks, we are on our final hook. So in index.ts, if you see while debugging, if you see the repeated count, repeated log, so just remove this react.strict mode. Okay, you can directly use the app. So now instead of app I will use search text box. Okay. So in search text box I have text box here, and as it is a text box we already have hook use input. Okay, so const input I can use it here. So whenever whatever I type here it will be, get print. Let me add some styling, margin 20. Okay, so what I have to do is, how we do is, whenever we have like a table and search box, on each search keyword is change, we need to call the API. Okay, but it is very costlier operation. Like suppose if I have press J, you will call API, and I am typing very fast, also you will call for API with J, then JO, then JOH and JOHN. How you can solve this problem? Like whenever I user done with typing, then after that we can call the API. For that reason we have a concept called debouncing. So we are going to create here a hook for debouncing. So let's create that. Okay, so I will create here debounce value, and here, okay, let's create use state. and its initial value will be input dot value from the text box. Okay, that I will take in variable that I call debounce value, and let's print it here. And let's create here set debounce value. So whenever the input value change, I need to update debounce value as well. So use effect. Okay, here I will call set debounce value with similar value as input value, input dot value. So whatever the value we type in the text box, I will set same value to the debounce value. And let's provide the dependency input dot value. Okay, so suppose I write here John Mike. So the debounce is showing or getting set on each input value change. Okay, I don't want this, so how we can create a hook for it is create one hook. Let's call use debounce dot tsx const use debounce. Okay, and export that, export default use debounce. Let's take here initial value, that is string, and create one state, use state. In use state we can pass initial value. Let's take that in debounce value and set debounce value, and use that use effect hook here, which will set debounce value with initial value and provide a dependency of initial value, and return the debounce value. Okay, so it is just similar like here whatever we do. So I am returning this, and instead of use effect I will use debounce, and here debounce value. Okay, but still it is not solving our purpose. It is the same. Okay, so how we can do is we can use here timer, const timer set timeout. So here in set timeout we have two things. One is a function which get executed after some delay. So we can take delay from the user. If you provide the delay, that's okay, else we can provide our custom 5 millisecond delay. So let's write here delay. Okay. So if user provided delay, then we will take that, and this set timeout will set the debounce value from the initial value. So just remove this one, and once the component is unmounted, we need to clear the timeout. So here we have clear timeout, and inside that we can pass the timer. Okay, that's cool. Now check. I will pass delay of 1 second. Let's check. So here you can see the result is getting after some time. So I can type like John Cena. Okay, so after typing everything and after 1 second we will get the debounce value. So whenever like you are going to implement search text box, use debounce custom hook. That will help you a lot. It's Mike Tyson. Yeah, I hope you understand how we can create the hooks, what it can solve or change our thinking in the React. One question to you guys: what exactly use state hook is returning, and how much data it is returning? Please write down your answer in the comment section. If you like the video, if you come till now, I think you might like the video. Just press on the like button and subscribe the channel. I will come up with the new things. Also, I have created one Discord channel where you can post your queries, ask questions, so our community can solve your problems. I will share the link of this in the comment section or in the description. Just log in with that and try to help other guys and ask your questions as well. Thank you for your time.